So, Hare Krishna, bro. We can start.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So let's start our invocation prayers and then we can get into the verses. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna devotees. Again, we are continuing from the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So last session we covered three verses. We could cover only three verses, verse number 10, 11, and 12. So would anybody want to just summarize what we discussed in the last section, was session, or any realizations would like to share?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. So, probably just, to summarize what we learned was it was mostly about yajna, and it specifically talked about that if we are worshipping the demigods will, they will grant our wishes, they will give us what we want, and towards the end, it was said that even if we get that what demigods are giving us, but if we are not giving it back, we are like thieves.
Hmm. Nicely, Prabhu. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay.
Hare Krishna,
Yeah.
Prabhu, I
Sorry.
can.
Yes, Prabhu. Pandavan, Prabhu.
And Prabhu, and when the Lord created the universe, He sent demigods and all the entities along with the Vedas to perform the sacrifice. That we have seen.
Yes. So there is a system of cooperation between everyone, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct. Thank you, Prabhu. So yes, so as devotees have summarized, so in the first nine verses we saw the progression of the yoga ladder, right? So starting from the low level of attachment to results, and then gradually giving up the attachment, but not giving up the work, but giving up the attachment to the work, and then finally dedicating everything to Supreme Lord Krishna. So that's where we ended in the ninth verse in the very first section. After that, last session, we looked at verse number 10, 11, and 12. So Krishna is now trying to slowly expand that whole yoga ladder by starting with the Karma Kanda section. Karma Kanda section is for those who are too attached to the material world. Naturally, as we discussed, material world is the place that the conditioned souls are born in to enjoy the senses, right? That is the whole program of material world. So it's very natural. Sense gratification is a very natural outcome of material world. If it'll be surprised that one who's not enjoying the material world is not enjoying his senses. So vast majority of the people in the material world are here because they want to enjoy the senses. So how to regulate their enjoyment or how to control their enjoyment is the direction from the Vedas. So that's why vast majority of the Vedas, 95% of the Vedas will deal with Karma Kanda section, which means how to uh, enjoy but also regulate yourself. And that's where the system of sacrifices and all the yajnas come into picture, where Krishna set up this whole program that he also established all the department with given to different demigods so that they can monitor that particular department, and those who are really attached to that particular demigod can worship the demigod through the process of sacrifice as established in the Vedas. And eventually, when you go through this process of sacrifice, you'll come to the conclusion that ultimately everything is coming from Krishna. Krishna is source of everything. So one who becomes very advanced in conducting yajnas will come to the conclusion that ultimately everything is coming from Krishna. So why not directly engage in Krishna's sacrifice or service of Krishna? And those who follow this, but at the same time they want to enjoy the results too much, they want to take the entire share of all the whatever benedictions they get from the sacrifice, and are not grateful, as we discussed, right? Gratitude, not grateful to the people or the authorities, ultimately to Krishna, from whom everything comes. Then naturally we are considered thieves, right? Not just gross act of thieving, but even the act of uh, not being grateful is considered an act of thievery. So that is definitely punishable, because as thieves are punished, those who are ingrateful are also punished, right? So now from this today's verse onwards, 3:13 onwards, for Krishna will further speak about this purification process of sacrifice. How does one purify his life through the process of sacrifice? And ultimately, he will again gradually bring us back to the position of that nishkama karma yoga, or nishkama karma yoga, or bhakti position of bhakti yoga, where a person does it out of love and affection and not out of just a duty, right? That I have to do something, I have to serve Krishna, so I have to do this. So eventually, we have to come to that position where we are spontaneously engaged in Krishna service. So let's start with verse 13. Let me see. Pandava Bandhu Prabhu, maybe you can start chanting this verse and translation purport.
Okay, Prabhu. Yek, yek, Yajnasissa Sinasanho Muchyante Sarva Kilbishaihi Pujyante Te Tvaham Papa E Pachante Atma Karanath.
Yes.
Synonyms. Yajnas is the of food taken after performance of yajna. Asinaha, eaters. Santaha, the devotees. Muchyante, get relief. Serve all kinds of kilbashaihi from sin. Bhujan punjate, enjoy. Te, they, too, but aham, grievous sins. Papaha, sinners. Ye, who. Uh, Pachanti, prepare food. Atma Karanath, for sense enjoyment. Translation and purport by Stephen Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for the sacrifice. Others who prepare food for the personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. Purport. The devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called Santas, and they are always in love with the Lord, as it is described in Srimad Brahma Samhita 5.38. Premanjana Uchrit Bhakti Vilochena Santaha Sadaiva Hridayesu Vilo Vilokayanti. The Santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead Govinda, the giver of all pleasure, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, all attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Therefore, such devotees always perform yajnas in different modes of devotional service, such as Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam, etc. And this performance of yajna keeps them always aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association in the material world. Others who prepare food for self or sense gratification are not only thieves but also eaters of all kinds of sins. How can a person be happy if he is both thief and sinful? It is not possible. Therefore, in order for people to become happy in all respects, they must be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtana Yajna in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness in the world. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Thank you. So now, in the last verse, Krishna spoke about those who are considered thieves because they enjoy themselves without giving it without giving credit to those who have given it in the first place, right? So here, Krishna is saying that how to come out of that activity of thievery, how to come out of that mentality, and ultimately, it is a sin, it's a sinful tendency that causes us to perform the sinful act, right? It's a tendency that we have the mind is thinking of all sinful desires, and that's why ultimately it comes to action, right? Like you have acting and what is it, thinking, feeling, and willing, right? So first the thought comes, and then you contemplate on it, and then eventually you perform that activity. So how to come out of this cycle of sinful tendency and activity? So one very easy method is which everybody in the material world has to do is to we have to eat. We have to eat food, right? All of us have to eat food to survive, to keep the body and soul together. So the best way or the easiest, very practical way Krishna is telling us is that you offer the food first and then accept as prasadam and eat that. Of course, there are different levels of that. For us, naturally, devotees of Krishna, we have to offer food to Krishna. But there are also demigod worshippers who offer food to demigods. But that is also fine. Something at least better than not enjoying food without offering at all. But eventually, Krishna is bringing us to that platform that you have to realize that ultimately everything comes from me. So all the sacrifices are meant for me. So naturally, the food also that you prepare must be offered to me first. And if you do this, it's like the people in the medical profession, right? Those who are nurses or doctors or medical staff, they have to constantly be in touch with infections and all this. They keep interacting with people who are sick, and naturally they have a tendency to infect themselves also from other types of infections. So what do? They take care of themselves by wearing mask, or they take some jabs, injections or vaccinations, and they always sanitize themselves, right? So that's how they keep themselves clean, in a way, clean and protected from all kind of, in this case, sin or diseases, right? Similarly, for those who are practicing Krishna consciousness, we have to infect ourselves from the sinful tendencies, because, as I said earlier, the nature of the material world is sinful by design. Because here, the reason why we came here in the first place is to enjoy separately from Krishna. So that enjoyment spirit is there, and naturally the enjoyment spirit means, Prabhupada says everywhere, that you have to perform sinful activity knowingly or unknowingly. For example, there are so many living entities in this atmosphere, right? We don't see, we're not able to see. It's very small, small germs. I mean, I know those kind of bacteria, virus, and germs, and all are there in the atmosphere. So when you are, let's say, sneezing or you're breathing also sometimes, unknowingly you kill so many living entities. We don't even realize we're not grossly killing anybody, but unknowingly, when we are walking, also there are so many living entities on the ground. There are small, small ants and all. We won't be able to see with our eyes, but we are stepping on them and killing them. I'm sure everybody's experienced that, right? But those who are devotees, even if they perform sinful activity unknowingly, they naturally they pray, right? For example, devotees, when they by mistake they, let's say, they step on hand, they chant immediately Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare. So at least that tendency is there, that I've committed a sin, so let me at least pray for the living entities who are dying, or to release myself from such sinful activities. Because knowingly or unknowingly, we are naturally bound to commit sinful activity in the material world. So we have to always think of ways to protect ourselves, or disinfect ourselves from these sinful tendencies. So one very practical way Krishna is showing here is that we have to eat. All of us have to eat food. So why don't you just prepare nice food? And of course, there is a practical way of doing that, and our Prabhupada has given all the system of how to prepare, then offer to the deities, or in the temple, offer in the temple, and then you honor it as prasadam. When you do this right, you are protected from the sinful tendency. Generally speaking, you are protected. Of course, it doesn't mean that we deliberately want to, shield ourselves from these sinful activities and then we perform sinful activities outside. No, not like that. It has to gradually change our consciousness. So we have to come up. That's why I said not only the external act of performing sin, but even the sinful tendencies which are in our heart, in our mind, they have to go away eventually. And this is a way of purifying our gross senses as well as the subtle senses, and eventually the mind and intelligence. So this process, if we follow it sincerely, and we have all experienced it, how it purifies us, how it disinfects us, right? So naturally we slowly start coming out. At least we recognize the fact that we are committing sins. At least we don't perform knowingly, but unknowingly also we are becoming very, very conscious not to perform. Like the example of Jadabharat is there in Bhagavatam. He was such a fully realized, self-realized soul that even when he was walking on the ground, he was very, very conscious not to step on the ants. Right? He was very, very conscious. So that kind of consciousness comes by a very strong practice of Krishna consciousness and realization that Krishna is living in the heart of everyone. not only me, but and the human beings, but every living entity has Krishna in the heart. So how careful and respectful we must be to all the living entities, not only human beings, fellow human beings, but to all living entities, right? So that consciousness comes only by practice of Krishna consciousness, and that's how we disinfect ourselves. And naturally, we see that these kind of positive thoughts come in our mind when we follow this, right? So that's what Krishna is telling here, that devotees of the Lord are released. And devotees means, Prabhupada writes very nicely, are called santas. And santas means they are always in love with the Lord. He quotes this beautiful verse, Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena, Santaha, the same word comes here, Santaha. Santaha means their eyes are anointed with love. And Prabhupada uses the word compact of love. Compact of love means their love is only concentrated on Krishna. This is very important for us practicing devotees, as we discussed earlier, that we doesn't mean that we disrespect others, or we always respect, especially demigods we have to respect, but our worship and our love is only to Krishna. As we also discussed last time, that when you have father and uncles, yes, you cannot disrespect your uncles, but your attachment or your dedication or devotion must be to the father. When the father is there, we have to listen to the father and follow his instructions. And even the father is not there, then you remember his instructions. You can always take help from the uncles, but our attachment and our love must be directed to the father only. So in the same case here, our eternal father is Krishna. So the devotees are always in a very concentrated love with Krishna. They don't have multi directions. I also love this person, I also love that person. No, our love and dedication, devotion is always concentrated on Krishna only. But we respect every living entity because we see Krishna in everyone, especially the demigods we respect because they are in a very exalted position. So that is the meaning of compact of love. And Prabhupada writes different names of Krishna here: Govinda, giver of pleasures; Mukunda, giver of liberation; Krishna, which means that each of us has a Ishta Devata. Ishta Devata means we have a particular, of course, we know that they are all Krishna's forms, but sometimes we have attachment to a particular form of the Lord. Like many of devotees, like very appreciative, very attached to Nrsingadev, or they are attached to Lord Ram. Of course, they are attached to Krishna. Everyone is attached to Krishna, but they have specific attachment to different forms of the Lord. That is also fine because you have that inclination, you have that taste. So Krishna, that's why Krishna expands in so many forms. He knows that different people have different inclinations, and they have attachments. So why don't you direct the attachment to Krishna? That's why Krishna expands in thousands and millions of forms, so that he can cater to the loving desires of different devotees, right? And then, very importantly, Prabhupada mentions here that devotional service is direct performance of yajna, right? That's why Prabhupada links directly devotional service to yajna through the activities of devotional service, like Shravanam. Now, as we discussed, yajna means the main purpose of yajna is to sacrifice. Sacrifice what? So, when you are Shravanam, for example, when you are hearing, you have to sacrifice other hearing, give up other hearing to hear about Krishna. Correct? You have to hear something. So the ears are there, it meant to hear, right? We have a choice to hear whatever you want. But if you give up those desires to hear other subject matters and focus your hearing on hearing about Krishna, then that is a yajna, direct yajna. And because it is directed to Krishna, it is direct performance of devotion service. Because in the ninth verse, always remember when we are discussing the chapter, always keep in your mind the verse number 9. Because as I said, that is a foundational verse or the pivot verse for this whole chapter. There we know that yajnarthat karmano anyatra, that work that is not done not done or in connection with Krishna will always be binding, will keep us bound to this material world. So if we have to liberate ourselves, we have to connect ourselves to Krishna through whatever activities. So here Shravanam, then Kirtanam also. We can chant and use our tongue and the faculty of the speaking sense to speak whatever we want. But devotees, they have taken a vow or they have sacrificed other, talking of other matters, subject matters, rather than talk only of Krishna. The example Prabhupada gives in second chapter, I'm sure you remember that, of Amrish Maharaj. What is the example of Amrish Maharaj? Does anyone know? His example is given.
He used all his senses for in the service of Krishna. his eyes,
Can you give examples, Mataji?
his
Yeah,
eyes, his eyes, he saw Krishna's form, and then in
yes,
his hand, using his hands, he cleaned the temple of
yes,
Krishna, and
correct.
then walking, he was walking like legs he used for walking towards temple and all that, that kind.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah. So that example is given of Ambrish Maharaj, that he used every sense in the service of Krishna. Why? Because his mind was always focused at the lotus feet of Krishna. And because the mind was at the lotus feet of Krishna, naturally, all the senses which are controlled by the mind were automatically engaged. That is why the focus is always on the mind, right? Whatever the mind directs, the senses will do. And if the mind is directing us to material matters, the senses will follow. But his mind was Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vindayoho, right? Savai Mana means his mind was always fixed as the lotus feet of Krishna. Hence, his senses were able to be engaged. Every sense was engaged in some way or the other connected to Krishna. So that is our aspiration. We may not be able to engage all our senses, but at least start with Shravanam. First is Shravanam, hearing. And Prabhupada says, he gives the encouragement that any one activity is enough for us to perfect. We don't have to perfect all the activities. We are limited by our own capacities. So if somebody is attached to hearing, hear more about Krishna. Somebody wants to chant Krishna's names, chant Krishna's names more and more. Smaranam, remembrance. Archanam is worship. Some are attached to deity worship. So you can do deity worship, right? Instead of, some people have the habit of worshipping personalities. In India, it's a fashion, right? Every nook and corner, you will find somebody who claims himself to be a god man. So people are, really following and worshipping. But we all know that one who is in knowledge will understand that ultimately everybody is a conditioned soul in this material world. In the material world, nobody is perfect. So we have to worship the Supreme Lord, and his followers who are strictly following the Lord are also becoming pure and transcendental. So we can follow them like our pure devotees and spiritual masters and acharyas, because they are forever connected to Krishna. So those are the personalities we have to follow. So in this way, all of these activities, the 9 activities of devotion service, it's a performance of yajna, because it is taking us away from lower subject matters to something higher. So we are sacrificing our lower tendencies to take up something higher. And what is the result? It keeps us aloof from all kinds of contamination of sinful association, because any materialistic association is naturally sinful, as we have discussed, because the nature of the material world. Then Prabhupada expands that others who prepare food for self are not only thieves but also eaters of all kinds of sins. So not only are we a thief, and we are also sinful. And naturally, the question is, how can a person be happy if he's both a thief and sinful? Naturally, sinful activities will attract more sinful activities, and it will attract punishment. You will be punished either in the material world, either in this life, or after this life is finished, we'll be punished under the laws of God. Right? So it's definitely the destination, both in this life and next life, is going to be horrible for such persons. So in order to be happy, very easy process of Sankirtan Yajna, which Prabhupada always refers to. Every purport you'll find Yajna means Prabhupada comes back to Sankirtan Yajna, because that is a dharma for this yuga, and without which we can see that there is no peace or happiness in this world, right? We have all have experienced it, right? Yeah. So any comments or questions on this verse?
Prabhu,
Yes.
Haribol Prabhu.
Yes,
Prabhu,
Mataji.
can when we are doing the 9 processes of devotional service, anyone, matlab, amongst
Mm.
all,
Mm.
generally we see that somebody who is not very skillful is not able to do many मतलब एक भी ढंग से नहीं हुआ.
Mm. Mm.
Everything is like all टूटा टूटा टूटा.
Mm. Mm.
I'm asking something, please. So all tuta 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 tuta.
Mm.
So here what Prabhupada wrote the sentence that how can a person be happy if he is both a thief and sinful?
Mm.
Sentence was hitting it again and again that in our devotional service we are actually a thief and
Mm.
sinful person anyways.
Mm.
So because we are not doing anything properly, 100% dedication किधर भी नहीं है.
Okay.
So in this situation, so offering prasad we are doing, but the way you will do it in the Rajbhog consciously, you're
Mm.
not that conscious when you are at home because you are in a hurry always.
Mm.
You are always on the ticking of the time.
Mm.
Similarly, when you are chanting, you're again on the ticking of the time. कि
Mm.
खत्म करना है so that because आगे का पूरा
Mm.
scheduled है. But
Yes.
like mm, chanting is never scheduled. It is only कि you have to get up and chant.
Mm.
But then it is always on the clock. So then this is like committing sin only. Because like our 10 things which 10 offenses which we
Offenses.
say
Yeah.
for the chanting, that to
Mm.
be inattentive, but naturally we are committing that sin. So
Yes.
then when you offer bhoga, then you are not taking that sin chalo. But then when other devotional activities comes, how do we
Mm.
protect ourselves from that?
Okay. Good question, Mataji. Mataji, first of all, one who is sincerely trying to engage in devotion service can never be sinful. So that idea itself is not correct. That you're performing sin. It is not sin. There is a difference between sin and offense, right? Offense is because of our, whatever conditioning we have, but somehow the other we're trying to come out of it. Sinful. This what Prabhupada is writing here is one who's definitely not doing any devotion service, whether it is offensive or offenseless, right? One who is not giving credit to the supreme authority at all. He wants to be independent. So this attitude is one of that who acts independently, who doesn't follow authority. But we who are practicing devotees, yes, we are struggling, no doubt. Everybody of us is struggling, but we are making a conscious effort always to improve ourselves. That is not considered sinful at all, because remember, Prabhupada writes that we are patients in this material world, right? We are all very mentally, whatever sickness is there, the sickness is coming from our sinful desires and sense gratification. So we are all very, what do I say, extremely hardcore patients, right? Not simple cough or flu or anything. No, we have very, very serious disease, material disease. So we are trying to get cured, and the cure is not going to happen just like that, right? It will take time. It's a gradual process. So when you start your devotional service, there will be so many impediments because we are not used to it. Although it is a natural activity of the soul, but because we have been in the material atmosphere for God knows how many yugas we have taken birth, it is not very easy to give up those tendencies. But we are trying. So as long as there is a sincere effort, and as you rightly said, Mataji, you're already conscious that you're not doing properly. That itself shows that you know that you're not up to the mark. So where is the question of sin in that? There is no question of one who is sinful will think that whatever he is doing is correct. Will a thief or a sinful person ever think that he is performing sin? No, he will always think that no, whatever he is doing is correct. Then where is the question of repentance and guilt? You are experiencing, all of us experience it because we feel guilty and we are repentant that no, I am not able to perform. So that repentance itself is a platform on which Krishna will give his mercy. Devotees will share and devotees will give mercy. So we should never think, Mataji, that we are actually performing sin. So sin is something, once you're in touch with Krishna, even if you're only 1%, 99% imperfection in your activity, still you're coming out of the sin. There's no question of any sinful. Yeah, tendencies might be there, but that's the whole process. We are trying to come out of those tendencies. But it takes time. It's a gradual process. But the moment you started it, even though all our activities are imperfect, what does Prabhupada say? And Krishna says, your sincerity in your endeavor. Later in Bhagavatam, Prabhupada writes a very strong statement. We should all remember this. Voluntary endeavor is the only qualification to get the mercy of the Lord. You can search this in Veda base. Voluntary sincere endeavor is the only platform on which you'll get mercy. Something like that. Right, so that's all we have to, and here in this chapter also later Krishna will talk about it. He will mention that later. So that is what we are aspiring for, Mataji. We are only trying to be as sincere as possible in our efforts. So whatever we express outside, there is no duplicity in our heart. We fully acknowledge that we have faults. We have, because we are not doing it perfectly. None of the activities, not only one, I mean, even 9 activities, we try different activities, but none of them are perfect. Doesn't matter. Our qualification is that are we trying to sincerely do it and improve ourselves? There will be 100 faults, but Krishna is not looking at the faults, as I said. He only looks at the tendency, your sincerity, your attitude. Is he trying to cultivate the attitude of gratitude? Right? Is he cultivating the attitude of gratitude and trying to serve me despite all the impediments in his life or her life? That is what is important, Mataji. But doesn't mean that we always stay in that platform. We have to constantly strive. And devotional service is so nice that is not only based on your endeavor, right? There is always a mercy aspect. So if you are sincerely trying, Krishna will definitely reciprocate. He is just waiting As Prabhupada says, you take one step, Krishna will take 10 steps. But we have to take that one step. We should not think that, oh, I can't do. Many times we think that, oh, I'm not capable of doing this. I'm not capable of doing this. It is not your capability only. The empowerment comes from Krishna or the spiritual master, rather, through the spiritual master. So we have to take that step of voluntary endeavor. That's why Prabhupada writes voluntary endeavor is only qualification. That's the only qualification, really. We don't have any other skills or abilities. Everything is coming from Krishna. Naturally, nothing is our own. But our sincerity, our endeavor, our desire to do something, that is only our desire. Nobody can take that away from us, right? Krishna does not interfere. He does not interfere on our minute independence. So our sincere desire is the only thing that we can cultivate, and in that way we try. Doesn't matter even if it is there are 1,000 mistakes we may do, but eventually Krishna will purify us, and then He will make us. He will give us the empowerment to continue the services and grow in the devotion service. Is it okay, Madhuri?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking that. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. I
Yes.
would like to know how, when we offer the prasad, how to understand he has taken it, or apart from the tasting change, how do we understand quantity remains there? And I mean, sometimes people ask me, right?
That is the inconceivable potency of the Lord, right? When Krishna says Purnamadam, Purnamidam, Purnam Mudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Avashishyate. What he says that everything that comes from him is complete. And even after that complete thing comes out of the complete remains complete. So this is that is the inconceivable potency of the Lord. So we can feel that in our consciousness, actually, what we are eating, apart from the taste aspect. Right? Taste is definitely there, no doubt. Prasadam obviously is much purer, right, than ordinary food. But it's the consciousness after taking prasadam for some time, at least may not be immediately, but sometime you start feeling automatically that there is a difference. The way I'm thinking. There is those subtle, that agitations and all those things so slowly go away. I'm not saying again, there's no magic thing, right? That just goes away like that. No, it is a gradual process. The more you practice it, the more you feel it. So it's not like a gross thing that you see Krishna actually coming and accepting. But Krishna doesn't have to do that, because later Krishna will, in this verse, I think one or two purports later, Prabhupada explains that famous verse from Brahma Samhita, Angani yasya sakalendriya. Krishna does not have to actually eat this. By just looking at the offering, he can accept it. And because he's complete, he can just return the whole thing as complete even after accepting. That is the potency of the Lord, right? But we can feel it in our consciousness, in our thinking. Are we able to remember Krishna more? Are we able to engage in more devotion service? Are we developing the sincerity more? Those are the symptoms that we are honoring prasadam. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhu. Correct. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else? Okay, then let's go to the next verse. Now, these two verses, right, 14 and 15, very nice description of a cycle of sacrifice. Now, Krishna has explained the importance of performing sacrifice. But now Krishna will give a very important explanation of how the sacrifice, right? What is a so-called cycle of sacrifice? It's not chakra. Huh? Cycle, not chakra. So how does the cycle of sacrifice, from where does it start and where does it, how does it manifest, basically? And what is the source of that? It's very, very important for us to understand these two verses. So we should look at 14 and 15 together, right? Let's...
Prabhu, can I read?
Please, Mataji. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
अन्नाद् भवन्ति भूतानि प्रज्ञाद् अन्न समं भवः यज्ञाद् भवति प्रजन्यो यज्ञः कर्म समुद्भवः. Annat, from grains, bhavanti, grow, bhutani, the material bodies, prajanyat, from rains, anna, of food grains, sambhava, production, yajnat, from the performance of sacrifice, bhavati, becomes possible, prajanya, Prajanya, rain. Yajna, performance of yajna. Karma, prescribed duty. Samudbhava, born of. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties. Purport. Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, a great commentator on Bhagavad Gita, writes as follows: Ye Indradi Angataya Vasti Indradi Angataya Vasati Tam Yajnam Sarveshwaram Vishnum Abhay Abhiyacha
Abhyarcha.
Chesham Ya Chesham Ashanti Tena Tad Dehayatram Sampadyanti. I think, Prabhu, this is a four-liner shloka, right?
You can read it as a prose. Just read it. Yeah.
Yeah. ते सन्तः सर्वेश्वरस्य यज्ञपुरुषस्य भक्ताः सर्वकिल्बिषेर अनादिकालविवृद्धेर आत्मानुभाव प्रतिबन्धकेर निखिल पापेर vimuchyante. The Supreme Lord, who is known as the Yajna Purusha, or the personal beneficiary of all sacrifices, is the master of all the demigods, who serve him as the different limbs of the body serve the whole. Demigods like Indra, Chandra, and Varuna are appointed officers who manage material affairs, and the Vedas direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods so that they may be pleased to supply air, light, and water sufficiently to produce food grains. When Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different, the demigods, when Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped. Therefore, there is no separate need to worship the demigods. For this reason, the devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness offer food to Krishna and then eat, a process which nourishes the body spiritually. By such action, not only are past sinful reactions in the body vanquished, but the body becomes immunized to all contamination of material nature. When there is an epidemic disease, an antiseptic vaccine protects a person from the attack of such an epidemic. Similarly, food offered to Lord Vishnu and then taken by us make us sufficiently resistant to material affection. And one who is accustomed to this practice is called a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, a person is in Krishna consciousness who eats only food offered to Krishna can counteract all reactions of past material infections, which are impediments to the progress of self-realization. On the other hand, one who does not do so continues to increase the volume of sinful action, and this prepares the next body to resemble hogs and dogs to suffer the resultant reactions of all sins. The material world is full of contaminations, and one who is immunized by accepting prasadam of the Lord, of food offered to Vishnu, is safe from the attack, whereas one who does not do so becomes subjected to contamination. Food grains or vegetables are factually eatables. The human being eats different kinds of food grains, vegetables, fruits, etc. And animals eat the refuse of the food grains and vegetables, grass, plants, etc. Human beings who are accustomed to eating meat and flesh must also depend on the production of vegetation in order to eat the animals. Therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on the production of the field and not on the production of the big factories. So true. The field production is due to sufficient rain from the sky, and such rains are controlled by demigods like Indra, sun, moon, etc. And they are all servants of the Lord. The Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices. Therefore, one cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. That is the law of nature. Yajna, specifically the Sankirtan Yajna, prescribed for this age, must therefore be performed to save us, at least from the scarcity of the food supply. Thank you, Shri.
Thank you, Mataji. So it's very nice, this verse. This verse is very important. This is the next verse where Krishna is explaining that what is the source of sacrifice? From where does the sacrifice come? right? So first thing Krishna says that in the material world, naturally, as we have discussed, everybody has to eat to survive, right? So all living bodies subsist on food grains. And where does the food grain comes? Come from the rains. Unless there are rain, there's no growth, right? No grains, no vegetation. And rains are produced by performance of yajna. And yajna is born of prescribed duties. Very important, right? Yajna is born of our karma or activities, which are prescribed duties in the shastras. So this is there are two aspects. So this whole cycle is divided into two verses. So this is the first part where our gross activity of eating is connected to our prescribed duties, or because that's where the yajna comes from. And yajna, if you perform yajna, there'll be rain, and by rain there'll be growth of vegetation, and then we can subsist. So naturally, we have to be grateful for the vegetation, because whoever is giving us food grains, we have to be grateful to them. And that's why we perform the sacrifice, to express our gratitude. But ultimately, Krishna, as Prabhupada explains here, that even though the demigods are there, who are appointed officers, they are actually, that's why the Vedas also direct to satisfy demigods. But ultimately, it is Krishna who is worshipped. But this is an indirect way of worshipping Krishna, right? But that is also fine, as we said. One who doesn't come to the platform of directly worshipping or sacrificing for Krishna is recommended to perform sacrifices for the demigods. But ultimately, it is the Supreme Lord who is sanctioning everything. Right? It's actually, they're all appointed by Krishna. The Prabhupada has appointed officers. And you can always see that connection with the government, right? Government and the prime minister, the president, who is the topmost, and then there are different ministries. So they are all operating under the direction of the main person, prime minister, right? So similarly here, ultimate Supreme Lord is the ultimate authority, and all the demigods are acting under his direction. So even if we are not able to worship directly because of our sinful tendencies and a material contamination, we are not able to see the reality that Krishna is behind everything, and we only see the appointed officers, that is also fine. We start with that process, right? We start offering worship to the sacrifice to the demigods. But ultimately, we know that ultimately the process is connected to Krishna anyway. So there is a process of purification in that process also. May not be as much as direct worship of Krishna, but nevertheless, there is a purification. So the example often Prabhupada writes of watering the root of the tree, right? We don't water the leaves, we don't water the branches, we don't water the trunk and all that. We always water the root of the tree. And if the root of the tree is watered, naturally all the parts of the plant of the tree are automatically nourished. So Krishna is the root or the source of everything. That's why the process of devotional service, we should, as I was mentioning last time, that many people have this tendency that, oh, not only Krishna, we have to please the other demigods also, right? Yeah. So other demigods also. So we don't need to do that, because ultimately everybody is part and parcel of Krishna. So if you water the root, the demigods are automatically satisfied and happy, because the root is happy, the root is satisfied. Same way the stomach, the whole body, the food is not fed to the hands or legs or the head, right? The food is fed to the stomach, because if the food is fed to the stomach, naturally all the parts of the body are nourished. So we should always satisfy the root or the source of everything. And the source of everything is Krishna. And that is the whole program of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness means we try to satisfy Krishna. And in that way, everybody is satisfied. Like we discussed last time, right? That pastime of Durvasa Muni going and visiting the Pandavas in the forest. And by Krishna just accepting one grain or one vegetable from that pot, all the Durvasa Muni and all his disciples were automatically, they felt, oh, it's too heavy. So they just vanished from the scene. So that is an example to show that if you try to please Krishna, everyone and everything will be satisfied. So that is ultimately the point of Krishna consciousness. But somebody is not in that platform is still recommended to worship the demigods, so that gradually he'll come to the point of worshipping Krishna eventually, right? Then this process of eating prasadam, we have discussed, nourishes the body spiritually. So not only are past sinful reactions vanquished, but the body becomes immunized. So we discussed the example of vaccination and injection, which immunizes us from the contamination or diseases. An epidemic, we have all experienced it. No need to, everybody realizes this, right? That there was an epidemic recently, and then we were all asked to take vaccination to protect us from the effect of the epidemic. So devotional service is like that. It's an antiseptic which keeps us uninfected from all the diseases. Diseases here means the material tendencies and material contamination. So counteract the reactions of all past material infections. And these are the reasons why we are not able to progress. I think devotees were asked earlier also. We feel, why are we not progressing? Because of our, our material attachments, past attachments. In this life, we may be trying to come out, but then there is a baggage of attachments we have kept in our mind. And that's why the mind is constantly taking the soul to different bodies, because the past impressions are always there. And they will manifest anytime, whenever there is an opportunity for it to manifest. So these are the impediments in our progress to Krishna consciousness. But by simple process of offering food to Krishna and honoring prasadam, we are already coming out of the reactions of past material infections. But because the clearing takes time, that's why we don't immediately see a result. But if you continuously practice it, one who does not do so continuously, right? The other side. But one who continues to do that, he will definitely feel the result that he's getting purified. But one who doesn't do, then he continues to accumulate the sinful reaction, because already there is sinful reactions from the past. Now you accumulate more sin. Then naturally the next life is going to be horrible, right? Prabhupada writes, resemble hogs and dogs. Because ultimately you have committed so much sin that you don't deserve a human body, right? That you gain an animal body. And material world, we have discussed, is full of contaminations. And one who's immunized by accepting prasadam is safe from the attack, whereas others continue to get contaminated. So such a beautiful process of, Prabhupada explains the actual meaning of what Krishna is telling here. Krishna doesn't say here, you offer food to me, right? Nowhere he says that. But ultimately, he wants us to come to that platform. In the 9th chapter, Krishna will say, offer directly to me, and he will explain what he has to offer. Patram pushpam phalam toyam. So that directly because 9th chapter is devotional service, the pure devotional service, right? So naturally, he's talking about him as a supreme personality of Godhead, and everything must be connected to him. But here, Krishna is not directly telling, because he's still preparing our consciousness to start accepting Krishna as Supreme Lord and doing everything for him. So he's speaking very, very generally here, but Prabhupada cuts through everything and gives a direct meaning here, that ultimately it is Krishna consciousness only which can prevent us from all material infections. So any comments or questions on this verse?
Prabhuji, that line that rain comes from yajna, I mean, we can understand it, but when we are discussing it with today, with someone who is not Krishna conscious or just a normal person who just wants to have a conversation around this topic, but then how to discuss this point specifically, that rain comes from yajna?
I mean, see, people generally understand that, you see, the way to explain that is, you can't artificially create rain, correct? Rain has to come, there has to be ultimately some dependence on some authority, right? Rain, many countries have started this acid rain concept and artificial rain concept, but then that is not sustainable, right? So rain means there is some authority who is granting that. So that is the first step. It's not up to us. Then if there's everything's up to us, then we could have flourished everywhere, right? Even in deserts, we could have grown. Even the deserts also will have vegetation. But then the way the world is designed, that ultimately we have to depend. We can do our activities, whatever it is, but ultimately if there is no what do I say, the authorization from the higher authority, then the rains will not come. And without rains, that everybody understands that there's no growth of vegetation, right? So that the whole Govardhan Lila also we discussed last time, right? That the Indra Yajna was done by the Rajavasis because they wanted rain. So they understood that rain has to be authorized by Indra. Although although they were just showing an example that, by only pleasing demigods is not going to help us. Ultimately, Krishna's purpose of that Leela was that you depend only on me, not on demigods. The devotees have to depend only on Krishna. But in generally speaking, also, even if you don't tell that, you have to perform sacrifice, ultimately we have to explain that to get rain also there is a process, there is a dependence. That's why we find in the material world today, in Kali Yuga especially, everything has gone haywire, right? There is no regular rain that is happening, especially in places like Singapore, right? Anytime it can rain. There is no regular rainy season or monsoon season here. Throughout there, anytime it can rain, untimely rain. It doesn't help. But in places where there is regular seasons, of course, now all the regular stuff is gone, right? In India also nowadays, it can rain anytime. There is no proper seasons that are happening, right? Why it is not happening? Because of this. Because we are not actually performing any sacrifice. There is no There's no activity to please the higher authorities. Nobody has faith in the process that we have to perform sacrifice. In our society also, in recent times also, in the last 200 years also, there have been many situations where some places which have been affected by drought and no water, no rains at all for many, many months. They have suffered. And then devotees have come together, they have done Sankirtan Yajna. And after that, there has been plenty of rain in South India. In our society also, I remember Loknath Maharaj and other devotees, sannyasis, they did this Sankirtan Yajna because the common people were requesting that we're not getting rain. So why not do Sankirtan? It's an opportunity to glorify the Lord. Why not? So that's why Prabhupada writes here, right? Yajna, specifically the Sankirtan Yajna, must therefore be performed. Forget about devotion, that will come later. At least it saves us from scarcity of food supply. This is a very nice statement, very deep statement actually. We should not think of Sankirtan Yajna means, yes, ultimately it is devotional service, not to please Krishna. But even in our day-to-day aspects, if we're having some difficulties, even performing Sankirtan Yajna, because the whole Sankirtan Yajna is trying to please the Lord, right? And then by pleasing the Lord, the demigods are pleased and then they will supply whatever there is scarcity. So that is the process. But because today nobody performs Yajna, that is why they're untimely, there are no rain sometimes, or untimely rains when it is not needed. When the harvest season is gone, after that, if it rains, what is the use? There's no point, right? So there has to be, everything has to be regulated, everything has to be timely, right? Then only there is, everything will be provided in plentiness. But unfortunately, because everything has gone haywire, today the production is gone, everything is gone, right? Yeah. Is it okay, bro?
Yes, Prabhuji. Right.
Yeah. In Kunti Mata prayers also, if you remember, if you go to Bhagavatam later, Kunti Mata will pray. She's praying to Krishna that whatever is you see here, whatever there is abundance, how much ever we are flourishing, is all because of you. Because you have touched your lotus feet on the Mother Earth. That's why the Mother Earth is producing everything in bountiful, right? In Yudhishthira Maharaj's rule also, it was mentioned in Bhagavatam that the earth was producing so much in plentiful that nobody had any scarcity. Even the cows, when they were walking on the earth, the milk was dripping from their milk bags. We don't see this here anytime, right? We hardly see cows. Only when you go to Goshala, we see cows. But we never see the side that the cows are walking and the milk bags are so fatty, they're full of milk that it is dripping on the earth. So that was a kind of rule. And why? Because Yudhishthira Maharaj is a pure devotee, so everything that he did was ultimately to please Krishna. So Mother Earth, which is also one of the representatives of the Lord, she was giving everything in plenty. But this aspect, those who don't understand, must be explained in a little more scientific way, that we cannot arbitrarily create rain. It has to naturally follow the process, and for that there is dependence on some supreme authority or some authorities at least. And then there should be a way to connect to that authority and please authority. Then only everything will be regulated. Thank you, Prabhu, for asking that here. Thanks. Anything else? Yeah.
Prabhuji, in this second para, it's mentioned, therefore, ultimately, we have to depend on production of field, not on production of big factories. See, now, except farmers, we are also devotees sitting all these cities. So, how to understand this sentence and how we can go towards this way?
Okay. Yeah. It's a very practical thing. Prabhu, now, to be very honest, we are living in a situation where we cannot go back like 50 years, 100 years, go back to that times, right? Where everything was based on purely agriculture and there were no industrial setup. We can't go back now, unfortunately. So what we have to do is, in whatever situation we are, we simplify our life. We don't complicate. That's the most practical way of thinking. Now, if you're working in Singapore, we have family, you don't drop everything and go, I know I want to go to a village and stay there. You can do that when the right time comes. When you have a family or take care of family, you can't just force everyone and leave and go to some village and stay there. When the suitable time comes, yes, after retirement, yes, most welcome, you can go and stay, right? That's okay. And many people do that also. They have this community villages. In India also, there are many places, like for example, Salem. Salem is a small town in Tamil Nadu. There, the devotees, they live a very simple life under the guidance of His Holiness Bhakti Vikash Maharaj. You must go there, I think. Go to see how they live a very simple life. They don't have electricity. They have houses which have electricity, but in the main temple, the Brahmachari ashram, they don't have electricity. and a very simple life, and they're very blissful. Why? Because they have engagement. They have some positive engagement. They're not just doing it for the sake of austerity. See, ultimately, you perform penance and austerity. There is no use if it is not connected to Krishna. Then it becomes a disturbance to yourself and to the society also. There is a verse in Bhagavad, in the scriptures, we said, what is it verse? Okay, the meaning of that verse, I'm not able to remember the exact verse, but the meaning of the verse is, if you perform any amount of austerity, but it is not connected to Krishna, then it is a waste. And if you're already performing devotional service and connecting everything to Krishna, you don't need to perform any additional austerities, because that itself is an austerity. So, practically speaking, if you're living in cities, which most of us are in this current age, we cannot just artificially give up anything or try to enforce artificiality in a place where it cannot be. Now, in Singapore, if you are expecting that, no, I will only drink cow milk, I will go to the farm and get milk, I will not go to the supermarket and I will try to grow. It is not possible, right? Practically. So what we try to do is, we, as far as possible, try to simplify existence. We do need equipments in the house. We need refrigerators. We can't help it, right? That's how we have created our own life like this, that we are dependent on different gadgets. But we try to minimize or reduce dependency on too much of these things, right? Like, for example, you can go to the market and buy fresh vegetables, right? Don't buy frozen stuff too much. Don't keep frozen stuff at home, because it's not good, right? Frozen stuff is not healthy, it's not natural. So buy fresh vegetables. Milk also, there are certain brands of milk you can buy, no problem. We don't know how it is produced, we don't know, right? But at least, based on what devotees have told those people, local people there, they tell you that, okay, you can use this milk. Okay, then use that milk. So, but still, we don't have to go to there's no farm here in Singapore. There used to be a farm, but I don't think they are producing anymore. But doesn't mean that you go to the farm every day and buy milk. It is not practical, right? So in India, we can still get farm produced milk or actual Goshala milk. But here we are not fortunate to do that. It doesn't matter. You try to see what is the best possible way of simplifying your life. Then don't depend too much on artificial things like this, canned foods or instant foods. That and all we can definitely control. I mean, I'm not saying completely stop, but minimize, right? Sometimes children are there, you can't help it. And if both husband and wife are working, then you have to practically think of how to. It doesn't mean that you create disturbance in the family. No, just try to see how best you can manage things by simplifying your existence. That's all we can do in this world, Prabhu. We can't do anything much.
Understand. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for asking that. Anything else?
Prabhuji, I just have one question with regards to the last part of the purport. So, Prabhuji, if few people are performing yagyas, whether Sankirtan yagya or any yagyas that is referred here, but majority of the population is not doing it, is it like everyone suffers because of the unregulated rains and scarcity of food and supply?
Oh, yes, absolutely, Mataji. Because whether we like it or not, we are living this world and we are connected to every living entity. And Krishna is arranged in such a way that all these living entities are currently living in this Kali Yuga, in this planet. It is his arrangement. And of course, our karmas are there. So by superior design, we're already in this place and we're affected. Like, for example, something happens in the US today, the whole world is connected. Something happens in the US or some Middle East, something is happening. We are affected because the oil prices shoot up, or there is some scarcity in gas or whatever, right? So naturally, we're affected by the sinful activities of others. But as far as possible, we can keep ourselves insulated to as much extent as possible by engaging in devotion service, because it's like a protective sheath around us, right? It's like it gives you that protection around us, that even if there are so many things happening around us, somehow or the other, we are not affected. And that is Krishna's arrangement, because ultimately the maintainer of everyone is Krishna. Right? Prabhupada writes that in the forests, the elephants, they eat tons and tons of food every day. Who is providing to them? They are not working in the factories and earning money, right? Krishna provides for everyone. But that act of dependence, or that feeling of dependence on Krishna must be there. At least for us, we can do that. As practicing devotees, we can always feel that dependence on Krishna. As long as we feel dependent on Krishna, he will protect us. He will create situations around us that we are still somehow or the other able to manage. And the most important thing, Mataji, is under no circumstances we should stop our devotion service. And that is what we should, our aim must be only that. That doesn't matter, so many difficulties are coming, but we must push on. We must go on with the devotion service. And if you just do that, that again, voluntary endeavor or sincere endeavor is all Krishna is expecting, then he will arrange everything around us. But we must have that faith that Krishna will protect and he will do what is necessary, even though we see so many, because that's what we directly manifesting in front of our eyes, that whatever is happening, so many problems, and sometimes we feel caught in all this web of different sinful activities. But we just go on with our devotional service. That's a mantra that Prabhupada has given. We simply push on with our devotional service with whatever constraints we have, whatever limitations we have, and then leave it to Krishna to manage. That's why some or the other things are still going on, right? Does that help, Madhuri?
Yes, thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. All right,
Swayam Prakash,
yeah, yes.
sorry, just
No, go on.
Yeah, Rametivaji, thank you for asking that question. I was just thinking how to jump to this topic. Prabhu, just a line of thought which I had. What the way Mataji asked that the people don't do it. So, in general, the crowd around you will see, especially the Indian crowd. Outside people, apart from the Indians, they are not very much into the magic chamatkar hona chahiye. You will see the followers like everybody is even worshipping the demigods na. Even if they'll do the smallest यज्ञ also ना, उनको चमत्कार चाहिए कि उसमें से हमारी लाइफ बहुत अच्छे से बदलनी चाहिए. So if everybody wants the change, all good things in their life, but nobody wants to actually go through. Everybody wants to give example of Ram, Lakshman, Sugriv, or say Pandavas or Draupadi. सबको बोल. Everybody likes to talk, but nobody wants to go through uh, the pain and the surrender which they made to the Lord. So here the statement which came in the purport that the Lord can be satisfied by sacrifices. Therefore, one who cannot perform them will find himself in scarcity. So here the word sacrifice means yagya. But the translation which came that yagya is born of prescribed duties. So I was just trying to connect it that how everybody is running behind doing the formalities. But what Krishna is actually asking is that sacrifice of following and going through the pain and still remembering him and being attached to him. The Kunti Maharani's prayers, which she says that let me go through all the troubles, no problem, so that I can again and again remember you.
Correct.
So that statement was really like I just connecting it to it, and Ramativaji asked it. So, but in that connection only, Prabhu, I had a question that so much Krishna has emphasized on the food grains, but ultimately we have to rise up to the standard of controlling our tongue, right?
Correct. But you see, Krishna is gradually taking us to the platform, right, Madhi? He's not immediately talking about control of senses and pure devotion service. That is an aspiration that we all have. But how does an ordinary person come to Krishna? Right? So there is a gradual process of purification. You have to continue doing whatever you're doing now, but purify those activities. And that's the whole idea. Do whatever you're doing, but just add Krishna into that and purify your activities. And eventually you'll come to that platform. You'll talk about it later. That one who is completely in the self-realized platform, he doesn't have to do anything. And that is what is coming to now, the next couple of verses. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's go to the next one. Let's see. Not read. Anuj Jain, Prabhu, you're there? Hare Krishna. Okay. Paramshil Mataji and Anil Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
Yeah, please, you can take turns to read the verse translation.
Text 15. Yes, Prabhuji. Text 15. कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षरासमुद्भवं तस्मात् सर्वगतं ब्रह्म नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितम्. Synonyms: karma, work; brahma, from the Vedas; udbhavam, produced; vidhi, you should know; brahma, the Vedas; akshara, from the supreme Brahman personality of Godhead; samudbhavam, directly manifested; tasmat, therefore; sarvgatam, all pervading; brahma, transcendence; nityam, eternally; yagna, in sacrifice; pratishthitam, situated. Translation.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, all the pervading transcendence is eternally situated in the act of sacrifice.
Okay, I will do purport.
Yes.
Purport. Yagnartha karma, from the necessities of work for the satisfaction of Krishna only, is more expressly stated in this verse. If we have to work for the satisfaction of a Yagna Purusha, Vishnu, then we must find out the direction of work in Brahman or transcendental Vedas. The Vedas are therefore codes of working directions. Anything performed without the direction of the Vedas is called vikarma, or unauthorized or sinful work. Therefore, one should always take direction from the Vedas to be saved from the reaction of work. As one has to work in ordinary life by the direction of the state, one similarly has to work under direction of supreme state of the Lord. Such direction in the Vedas are directly manifested from the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is said, Asya Mahato Bhutasya Nishvasthitam Etad Yad Rigvedo Yajurvedah Samavedo Tharvana Girashah. The four Vedas, namely the Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, are all emanation from the breathing of the great personality of Godhead. Brahma Aranyaka Upanishad 4.5.11. The Lord, being omnipotent, can speak by breathing air, for it is confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. The Lord has the omnipotence to the perform through each of his senses the actions of all other senses. In other words, the Lord can speak through his breathing, and he can impregnate by his eyes. In fact, it is said that he glanced over material nature and thus feathered all living entities. After creating or impregnating the conditioned souls into the womb of material nature, he gave his direction in the Vedic wisdom as to how such conditioned souls can return home back to Godhead. We should always remember that the conditioned souls in material nature are all eager for material enjoyment, but the Vedic directions are so made that one can satisfy one's perverted desires, then return to Godhead, having finished his so called enjoyment. It is a chance for the conditioned soul to attain liberation. Therefore, the conditioned souls must try to follow the process of yagna by performing Krishna conscious. Even those who have not followed the Vedic injunctions may adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that will take the place of performing the Vedic yagnas or karmas. Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Thank you so much,
Prabhuji.
Mataji. Now, this is the second part of the chakra, right, of the cycle of sacrifice. So, the first part we saw that the people subsist on food grains. Food grain comes from rain. Rain comes from yajna, and yajna comes from prescribed duties. And what are the, now Krishna talks about the next part. Now, the prescribed duties or regulated activities are coming from the Vedas. And where are the Vedas coming from? Directly from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now Krishna directly connects himself to the process of sacrifice here for the first time in this chapter. Of course, he spoke about Yajnartharth Karma in the ninth verse. So please remember again, keep going back to the ninth verse always in this chapter. So the ninth verse, Krishna said Yajnartharth, but he didn't say, although he meant himself, but he didn't say directly, right, that you do all your activities dedicated to me. He said, do it for the Lord, Supreme Lord, Vishnu. So directly he did not mention himself. But in this verse also, he's always not directly mentioning, but somehow or the other he's connecting the process of sacrifice to the Supreme Lord, which is Himself, who is Himself. And therefore, all pervading transcendence is eternally situated in each act of sacrifice, or in acts of sacrifice. So that's how the connection of the Lord is there in every activity of sacrifice, because ultimately it's connected to sacrifice are prescribed in the Vedas, and Vedas are coming from Him, right? As Prabhupada explains that Krishna, the Vedas manifested from his breathing. That is known as Shabda Brahman. Shabda, when you breathe, there is a sound of breathing, right? From that manifested the Vedas, all the four Vedas, like Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, all emanated from his breathing. Because the Lord, as we discussed, the last verse, he is omnipotent, or he has supreme potency. He can do anything with any of his activities or any of his senses, he can do anything. Like in the Vedas, it is said, Sa Aikshataha. Sa Aikshata means just by looking, by glancing, the whole creation came about. So here there is a small summary given of creation, how the creation came about. We know that when Krishna, the spiritual world, he expands himself into Balram, then Balram expands into Sankarshan, then from Sankarshan, the first four personalities like Vasudeva, Sankarshana, Aniruddha, and Pradyumna, they emanate, and from that the second Sankarshan comes, and from second Sankarshan Mahavishnu comes. Now the Mahavishnu is the expansion of Krishna, who is lying on this causal ocean. Causal ocean is the Karana ocean, which separates the spiritual world from the material world. So in the causal ocean, Mahavishnu is lying down, and when Mahavishnu breathes, all the universes are coming out from his body pores, from the skin pores. Like we have skin pores, the hairs are attached to the pores, right? So from the pores, different universes, many millions and billions of universes are coming out from his. So as he breathes, all the universes are coming out from the skin pores. And then in order to enliven the universe, because right now the universe is dead, nothing is just matter. So in order to create life, Krishna or Mahavishnu enters into each of the universe as a second expansion, which is Garbhodakashaya Vishnu. So Garbhodakashaya Vishnu means he lies down, he goes to the universe, then he lies down on that universe, he fills half of the universe with water, and then he lies down there, and from his navel, the lotus stem sprouts up. And then the whole creation of that particular universe, the 14 planetary systems in that universe, are in that lotus stem. Starting from Lord Brahma on the top, right? He's sitting on the lotus flower. So his planet is a topmost planet, Satyaloka. And then all the other planetary systems are in the stem. So the Earth planet is somewhere in the middle. It's a middle planetary system. And then there are Patal Loka and other lower planetary systems below that. So the whole creation is represented in that lotus stem. Then within each living entity in the universe, or each matter in the universe, or each atom, Krishna will enter again, this third expansion, as Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, or that is Paramatma, or the super soul inside. So in this way, Krishna expands as three Purusha avatars. That's why Prabhupada also writes here mention of Yajna Purusha, by indicating that the three forms of Vishnu, first is a Mahavishnu, who is on the causal ocean, from whose bodily pores the universe is coming out. Then Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, the second Vishnu, and third is Kshirodakashaya Vishnu, the super soul. Right? So this is how the Krishna so elaborately created this material world. And then what does he do? And at the end of the creation, what happens is those living entities who don't go back to the spiritual world, don't get liberated by devotional service, they have to stay back and come back to the material world. So at the end of the creation, they will all enter the body of Mahavishnu, because they lie there in a sleeping state, in a semi unconscious state, because they're waiting for the next round of creation, and then they will come out and continue their activities. So when the next cycle of creation starts, all these living entities who are in Mahavishnu's body, they also are coming out and impregnated, as that's what Prabhupada writes here. Krishna can impregnate with his eyes, that sa aikshataha, by looking at glancing, all these living entities are transferred back to the material world from his body. And Lord Shiva is the agency through which these living entities are transferred. That's why this Shambhu, or Shiva, who is also an expansion of the Lord, he is considered the father of the material world, just the material world only, because he is the one who is on behalf of Krishna monitoring the activities along with his consort Durga Devi. They manage the affairs of this whole creation. That's why sometimes we feel that Lord Shiva is supreme. No, when you talk to people, there is always this conflict that there is Shaivites and Vaishnavites. This conflict has been going on since time immemorial. In Kanchipuram, if you go to South Indian town of Kanchipuram, it's a temple town. There is Shiva Kanchi and there is Vishnu Kanchi. So Shiva Kanchi is this area where all Shiva temples are there, and Vishnu Kanchi is where the Vishnu temples are there. So this conflict is still going on between Shaivites and Vaishnavites. But the true understanding, we know that ultimately Lord Shiva is also a devotee of Lord Vishnu or Krishna. And he's just playing a part on behalf of Krishna just to manage his material creation. But because people in the material world don't see anything beyond that, they feel that, and Krishna is not visible, right? He doesn't, is not directly visible in the material world because he's in the spiritual world. So through his agents and expansions, he runs the affairs of the material world. And Lord Shiva is one of them. So people don't see anything beyond that, so they think that Shiva is supreme. Of course, Shiva is the greatest Vaishnava, no doubt. So we all have extremely, as devotees, always respectful, and we also worship Lord Shiva as a devotee of Lord Krishna. So when you go to a Shiva temple, we devotees, we should, as practicing devotees, we should never ask for any material benediction. That's what Lord Shiva is famous for, right? He easily gives material benedictions. But devotees, when they pray to the Lord, first of all, we glorify Lord Shiva as Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. So there are many verses in Bhagavatam which you can chant in front of Lord Shiva, and he'll be extremely pleased. Especially there is Rudra Gita in Bhagavatam. If you repeat those verses with Lord Shiva is chanted, he'll be very, very pleased. Because he's really looking for those personalities who can become devotees of Krishna. Right? He really is pleased with such personalities. So we glorify Lord Shiva that way, and we pray for his benediction that we also become sincere devotees. That is the prayer when we always go to Lord Shiva's temple or any demigod temple. Because many of us come from that system that we have family deities in whichever families we come from. So they may not be Lord Shiva, they may not be Lord Krishna or Vishnu, right? They may be Devis. For example, I'm from Kerala, so in my place, it's all Devi temples. So all our family deities are Devi temples. So sometimes my parents or my relatives will say, why don't you come? So we have to go. There's nothing wrong in going. But what is the purpose of going there? We pray to the deity that, please engage me in Krishna's service. Make me a sincere devotee, because you are a sincere devotee. You are a pure devotee. You have the power to give us the benediction, because ultimately, without the blessings of devotees, we cannot progress. So we treat the demigod as a pure devotee and we pray to them like that, right? So that is the vision or the consciousness of a devotee. Ultimately, everything that the devotee sees is ultimately connected to Krishna. So the material creation also, although we understand that Lord Shiva runs everything, but we are able to see the connection to Krishna. That's why Prabhupada explains that is Lord Krishna who expands his Mahavishnu, and from him the whole creation comes, and Lord Shiva is his agent to run the material affairs. That's how we devotees should see it, or practicing devotees should see it, right? Ultimately, everything is connected to Krishna. And then through his breathing came all the Vedas. And what does the Vedas contain? Vedas contain all the directions. It's like a manual. Like any product you buy, you get a manual, right? How to operate it. Same way, this Vedas is the manual for the material world. How to conduct your affairs in the material world. And that's why all the sacrifices are recommended in the Vedas. So different sections of the Vedas will have different sacrifices. So most of the sacrifices will be in the Yajur Veda, right? Yajur Veda will contain, it's a sacrifice, Veda for sacrifice, Yajna, right? So it will have different recommendations for sacrifice. The Rig Veda also has, but predominantly Yajur Veda will be the one which will have all the sacrifices. So we have to follow those principles, because ultimately it is coming from Krishna. And by performing sacrifices, we purify ourselves, and eventually we come to the point of Krishna consciousness. That is the point that Prabhupada is making. But Krishna consciousness is so nice, Prabhupada concludes, that even if those who are not in the practice of following Vedic injunctions, who don't even know what Vedas are, as I know the initial devotees of our movement, when Prabhupada went to the West, what to speak of Vedic, they didn't even have any concept of God. They were in a hallucinated state, right? They were all taking drugs, and this kind of hippie movement was going on. They were in a completely different, in a parallel world altogether, right? To preach to such people, obviously, Prabhupada could not have spoken about Vedic injunctions. You have to purify your life, you have to follow his regulative principles, this and that. There is a particular way. That's why many of the caste Brahmanas in India, they all objected. They were highly objective to what Prabhupada did, that you converted Shudras to Brahmanas. But that is the process. The process recommended by Krishna is that everybody is qualified to engage in devotional service. There is nobody who is barred from, because it's a natural birthright of every living entity. Because the whole point of coming to the material world is that we realize our mistake, we correct ourselves. It's like a rectification, right? Rehabilitation, rectification, and then we go back. And that's how everybody is naturally qualified for that. There's no special qualification needed. That's why it's very, very important for us to understand that even if we have not performed any Vedic purificatory rites, that is not needed. Because the moment you take up to Krishna consciousness, that actually replaces everything else, because that is the ultimate thing. Because everything is coming from Krishna. If you are trying to connect yourself to Krishna, what better thing can you think of apart from that? You don't need to go through any of these purificatory processes, right? That's the whole program of Prabhupada. He exactly implemented what was Krishna's desire, that he preached to the West and then he converted everything, every one of them into pure devotees, right? Because there is a process. It's not like a magic wand you touch and then you become pure devotees. No, there is a process. But then Prabhupada did not rely on all these purificatory rituals, because where was the time? Prabhupada only had limited number of years in the material world, and he knew that his time is limited here, so he had to do something on an emergency basis. So, but he didn't neglect any of the principles, but he took the essence, what is important, directly gave Krishna consciousness. There was no way that he could have taken them to this through this purificatory process. Then they would have been lost, all of them, right? Because they don't have any understanding. So direct Krishna consciousness is actually replaces everything else, because ultimately Krishna's desire of giving all these Vedas is everything to what does Krishna say in 15th chapter, that Vedescha sarver ahameva vedya. Later on 15th chapter you'll see that the purpose of all these Vedas is to know me. And what better way than Krishna consciousness to know me? You can, as we said, either you can take the long route of going through Vedas, analyzing, studying, and understanding who is Supreme Lord, who is Supreme, and what are his qualities, what are his pastimes, and everything. Or you come directly to Krishna consciousness, everything is already given here in the form of Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam. Everything is already there. So direct process of Krishna consciousness is far better than going through the indirect process. And indirect process, we're not even sure when we will reach the destination. So that is why everything can be short-circuited directly by performing Krishna consciousness. It is not it's not something lower, because we're not performing like, we're not chanting like Vedic mantras. We're considered very, very only Brahmanas can chant. The Vedic mantras also, there is a restriction that only those who are Brahmanas can chant those Vedic mantras. Like not everybody can chant. But for us, there is no restriction, right? Irrespective of whatever our condition is, we chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra and we are purified. So that is a direct process, which is what Prabhupada is emphasizing here. Any questions?
Prabhuji, I have a question. I mean,
Yes.
since you touched a lot of topics, one of the topic got stuck in my head, and I just want to some clarification on it. So,
Sure.
as you were saying that that Mahavishnu is there, who lies in the causal ocean, and then there is Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and we have Kshirodaksha Vishnu.
Yes.
I mean, this part, like, I knew, but the other part is like, as a body we talk about, we have causal body, subtle body, and gross body. And gross body is this Sharir,
Yeah.
and causal body and subtle body are the ones which we have to get rid of. But I never thought of them in parallel with where Vishnu resides. So I mean, is there a parallel? Because causal ocean is where Mahavishnu resides, and we have a
Yes.
causal body. And then Garbhodaksha Vishnu, we can say that he is in every universe. He is that subtle part, and we have a subtle body. And then
Prabhu, sorry,
Paramatma.
I'm not heard of this causal body. So generally, okay, what happens is there is a soul, and the soul is surrounded by a subtle body, which is mind, intelligence, and our false ego. And then there is a gross body of all our gross senses, which is made of material elements, right? That's the constitution, right? I've not heard of causal body. I don't know whether you're referring to soul as the causal. It's not a body. It's a entity that is our constitution. So soul is covered by subtle and gross bodies, right? That's the understanding that we have, right? And when Mahavishnu is lying on the causal ocean, and from him the living entities, as I said, from the previous creation who have not got liberated and still have to take birth in the next creation, they are in the body of Mahavishnu, but in that, of course, they are all souls, but they have the covering of subtle body around them, because they have not got rid of the subtle body yet. They've only given the gross body. After death, they give the gross body, but the subtle body is covering the soul and goes back to the body of Mahavishnu. And when they re-enter again the next phase of creation, that subtle body and the soul will get a new gross body. That we take birth in whichever species according to karma in the past life. And then we again enter the material world and continue our activities based on our past desires and past impressions. Is that okay to?
I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, the place which I'll have to revisit because in Hindi it's like Karan Sharir, Sukshma Sharir, and Sthul Sharir. So when you do the English translations, when I found so Karan Sharir it translated to the causal body, and then Sukshma Sharir
Yeah,
is
but
the subtle
Prabhupada does
and
not refer to causal body anywhere. Anywhere in
okay,
the in his maybe this is a different understanding. I don't know what that is, but based on our understanding from Srila Prabhupada, there is only gross body, subtle body, and the soul.
okay, Prabhuji.
Hmm?
Okay,
Yeah.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Sorry, Prabhu.
Yeah.
Just if you can again explain on, there's a statement in the purport that we should always remember that the conditioned souls in material nature are all eager for material enjoyment. But the Vedic directions are so made that one can satisfy one's perverted desires, then return to Godhead having finished this so-called enjoyment. Can you just emphasize on this?
Okay, let me just find that this thing, statement. Vedic directions are so made that one can satisfy one's perverted desire. Yeah. So this perverted desire simply means our sense gratificatory ideas. Because the whole concept of taking birth in the material world is what? To satisfy material desires, isn't it? So that's why the Vedas, that's why I said 95% of the Vedas is Karma Kanda. And that is this part. The Karma Kanda is actually meant to satisfy one's perverted desires, but in a regulated fashion. That's why if it is not regulated, then forget about returning to Godhead. That we will be continuing to rot here in the material world. But the Vedas is so nicely designed. Krishna designed it so nicely that he understands our mentality, our consciousness, that it is to enjoy that we have come to the material world. That is the whole idea, right? We're not come here to come here that okay, I got a little bored in the spiritual world. I want to just visit material world and then go back. No, we have fallen from either from the spiritual world or from the Brahman, or whatever that reason may be. But we are here now. It is because of our material desires, nothing else. And those desires are perverted desires because it is the real desire is to serve Krishna. So whatever is in the material world is always perverted. So perverted means desires in the material desires. That's all. But because we are here to satisfy, Krishna has given a regulated way to satisfy. Because he is ultimately our well-wisher. He doesn't want us to rot here. So he has created a program that, okay, you're attached, you want to engage in sense gratificatory activities, do that, but do that under the directions of Vedas, under Vedic directions. Because by following Vedic directions, because Vedas is connected to me, you are somehow the other connected to me through that process of regulated sense gratification. Then eventually you get purified and you'll come to me. That is what he's saying here. Is it okay,
Thank
Madhuri?
you. Yes.
Any one question we can take, maybe one more comment or question?
Prabhuji, that the four Vedas, it's named as Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Athurveda. They're saying that Krishna is saying that are all emanations from breathing of the personality of Godhead. They are saying, but in Srimad Bhagavatam, the first verse itself, it says that Brahma later on, like he got the knowledge from Krishna, and then later Brahma was the one who divided it into four Vedas. But I'm just asking that is it that of course, like Brahma came from Krishna only, like at the end of the day he came from the lotus stem that's there. So is that why that they're saying that indirectly it is me only? That's what he's trying to say.
Correct. So whatever Krishna gave the knowledge to Brahma is ultimately the instruction for him to break that Veda into four also was part of that teaching to Brahma, because Krishna knew that in Kali Yuga living entities are not able to understand. I mean, forget about, we don't even go to the Vedas nowadays, right? No, in Kali Yuga nobody even goes to the Vedas because we don't have time. First of all, we cannot even chant the Vedic mantras. Meters are so difficult to chant. But ultimately, the way it was given to Brahma, because Brahma is extremely intelligent, he can understand. So a summary form was given to him of the understanding of the four Vedas. And then it was Brahma who gave it to Narada. Narada gave it to Vyasadev. And in that process, they expanded it. So every person expanded further. Right? And then ultimately Vyasadev, looking at the condition of the Kali Yuga, he expanded it in such a way that he made it as simple and as expansive as possible.
Correct.
But ultimately, the source is coming from Krishna as one Veda that is broken into four. Yeah.
Okay. Got it correct. Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else? Yeah.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Just I want to summarize whether I'm right or wrong over
Yeah.
here. Prabhuji, this Sankirtan Yagna means basically in today's world we cannot sit and do the Yagna like the
Yes.
fire one. So
Yeah.
I think they are just saying the Sankirtan Yagna, like the preaching and the Kirtan we can do it. So in
Correct.
that, like our ears, I saw this one somewhere. I don't know the reference. Our ears will be like a Yagna Kund, and our here power is going to be a fire, and sound is a oblation, and tongue is a spoon, and Radha Krishna is a beneficiary here. Is it?
Yeah, I mean that is one way of understanding. Yes,
Just
yeah, that is one way. But ultimately, we are not so much caught up into the actual performance of yajna, because first of all, as Prabhupada writes here, right, in Kali Yuga, it's not possible to perform yajnas. But in a society, we still do it because ultimately everything is centered around Krishna only. The main ingredients in sacrifice is chanting. It's not the ghee or the wood or the other ingredients or the kushagras or anything. That those are not the ingredients. The main ingredient in a sacrifice is chanting, and Krishna is pleased by chanting because that is the dharma for this age. So this age, so every age, that in Satya Yuga the dharma was meditation. Right? Kriteya dhyayato Vishnu. So they were meditating on Vishnu because they could afford to. They had the mental faculty, they had the bodily, the physical strength to do that because they were living long, long lives, 100,000 years. So they could afford to spend 30,000 years in meditation. That's why many personalities, many did meditation for many, many years. Then Treta Yuga was Yajato Makai. Makai means sacrifice. In Lord Ram's time, that's why Lord Ram's, that time, many, many kings were performing Ashwamedha Yajna and different types of Yajna, right? Then Dwapara Yuga, it was Dwapare Parichayayam, which means temple worship, deity worship. That was the dharma for that age. That age. Then Kali Yuga, Kalo Tat Hari Kirtanat. Hari Kirtan or Sankirtan is the only dharma for Kali Yuga. So even if you perform any other sacrifice, it will not be perfect because we are full of imperfections and we don't have the necessary ingredients and the qualified priests and brahmanas to do that. So that's why the recommended process is to chant the holy names and chant it in congregationally chanting, Sankirtan. Yes, Mataji, is okay.
yes. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. I think we'll have to stop here because you just crossed the time. I was hoping that we can do a few more verses, but it's okay. Yeah.
Swam Prakash, please correct us. So people depend on food grains depend on rain. Rain is dependent on performance of yajna sacrifices. Sacrifices are born of prescribed duties.
Yes.
Prescribed duties depend on Vedas.
Yes.
Veda is
Prescribed duties
dependent
come
on
from
Supreme.
Vedas. Yeah. Prescribed duties are described in the Vedas. Yeah. And Vedas come from Krishna.
Yeah. Vedas come from Krishna, and thus we have to offer the whole cycle to the Lord.
Correct.
So
Exactly.
a cycle of sacrifice to the Supreme Lord, and it certainly leads to a sinless life, of life full of Krishna consciousness. This is right, correct?
Absolutely, yes. And Krishna consciousness is the direct way of performing the sacrifice.
Okay. Yes, sure. Thank you so much.
Yes, that's the right understanding. Thank you so much. So, Krishna willing, we'll continue next session. Thank you so much for joining. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Guru.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Prabhu. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.